And it was so
It was what?
early this year. Usually it's like
I
two
know.
weeks.
Well, we couldn't do it next week was we have a bat mitzvah. We have
Right.
Sadie's bat mitzvah. The following week we have something else. There's like stuff the rest of the weeks coming up. So it used to be around that time, and then it started drifting later and later into August. It used to be in the summer. It used to be like when there was a 20 or 30-degree difference between Santa Clarita. That was like part of the purpose was to give people a respite. A respite. That's a good word, right? A respite from Santa Clarita heat. And then all of a sudden, like I don't know, we were like doing it in almost September. So yeah, we went back to a traditional August, early August day. I don't think we've ever done it in July. Maybe we have, but it doesn't. I
No,
don't remember it being in.
we used to do a Shabbat in the park in July. And
Yeah,
we did this, the Beach Havdalah late until we all started having to leave to take our kids to college.
maybe,
Originally,
maybe.
back when dinosaurs ruled the earth and we had student rabbis, the Beach
Uh,
Havdalah was the chance to meet the student rabbi for the first time.
ah,
There you go. That's that origin of it,
that's a good
which would have been like which would have been like August, right?
mid-August, mid-August,
Right.
mid to late August.
So, gosh, look at that. So that's the origin story. Um, it's good to have the origin stories, right? Where this stuff came from. The I wonder if there'll be origin story. Yeah, I guess there will be. There'll be lots of them one day. Um, yeah, we got some origin stories today actually to look to look at. I love where we're at
Segue.
right.
Well done. Well done.
We're about to get we're about to get real. And by that I mean like up until now, up until chapter 25 of Genesis, we've had weird stuff, no question. We've had, you know, maybe angels cohabitating with women of Earth. I mean, there's been some weird stuff, don't get me wrong. But we're about to get real in the sense that we've also had weird stuff happen in families with people. We had Cain killing Abel, weird stuff. But it's been mythic. It's been like there's been a line. But now we're going to get conversations. Now we're going to get real family dysfunction. Up until this time, like you had Abraham and Sarah's stories, which sometimes were kind of weird, but they weren't really described. And again, it almost seems mythic. It almost seems like, well, we're not going to really tell you the whole story or the whole. There's not really a conversation. Now we're going to get conversations. Sometimes the conversations aren't long, but they are. They get real, and this is where, for the next 25 chapters or so, the conversations seem real. They seem like, okay, maybe they're on some level mythic, but they also seem like that's a conversation, that's something that happened in my family. And again, it's not always actually, it's usually not great stuff. And we really are going to see the fact that in our Bible, and again, for those people who were with us in the book of Kings and book of Samuel and Judges and reading about some of our heroes, nobody gets out of the Bible without a little dirt on them, to say the least. And there's going to be some really uncomfortable stories about our ancestors, which the Bible clearly doesn't shy away from. And it's not the kind of Greek myth stuff, which, I don't know that you can get much creepier than Oedipus, right? It's not that. And it's not necessarily, though there are some pretty strange stories we're going to get to, and we read about Tar and we read about some stuff there, but um, it's that it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be as sensational, dramatic, uh, you know, um, lurid, and 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 obviously something that happened a lot. These are like, no, this happens a lot, and that's one of the things that makes us it makes us really connect. Most people really connect with Genesis. So it's about to get, as I said, it's about to get real. Uh, and I think to some extent it's because we're getting into we're getting into the family of Jews. We're getting into our family. And when we talk about our family, okay, I, this is my take, may not be your take, probably not as popular of a take anymore as it used to be. I might sound a little old fashioned right now, but when we talk about our family, right, in our family, we might say things to each other that we wouldn't say to somebody outside of the family. I'm not saying again that, people don't have therapists and friends and people that they talk to, but there used to be a certain distinction of what people talked about. And again, I sound like an old fashioned person as I say this, I know, but people would say things and they would talk about things within the family that they would not talk about outside of the family. This, these conversations that we have here in Genesis, because we're now getting to our family, not, up until this time, Abraham's family outside of this are other peoples, right? The the Ammonites and the Moabites that are Lot's descendants, they're not our family. The Arameans are not our family. Um, and so as we get into Jacob and his sons, we're this is our family. And so we start talking about these people in ways that seems eerily familiar to those of us who still kind of like, we might talk about this in the family, but let's not talk about this on the street. So there is this kind of familiarity. Now, of course, today, everybody knows these stories. Everybody's read Genesis. And so our stories are not necessarily the story. Like, who would have thought that someone in Papua Guinea would one day be reading Genesis about a Jewish family that lived 3,000 years ago, 500 years ago, right? Almost 4,000 years ago, there was a Jewish family that lived in ancient Canaan, and we're reading about that dysfunction. Now, again, that family, wherever they are, in the far reaches of South America, wherever they are, those family stories are also resonant with them. But we didn't know that. And that's kind of makes it even more amazing, I guess, if you will. It's more awesome that these stories, but there are stories. And again, there is a level of this where we felt comfortable talking about this because this was our family. And we didn't have an issue, to me, in my opinion, that we didn't have an issue talking about the flaws in our family because they were our family. So keep in mind that these stories mean a lot to a lot of other people who are not Jewish anymore, but I don't know that they were intended to be that. So I don't know if you can, and we can't understand that today in 2026. We can't, we're part of a global community. And who knows who's watching this right now, by the way. So, not that I would say anything that would be offensive, but we're not just talking within the family anymore. All right. So what we start off with that build up is chapter 24, which was the story of finding a wife for Isaac and the fact that the servant we know or we assume is to be Eliezer goes back and finds a woman in Aram in Syria from Avraham family that was going to be um the suitable bride is Rebecca. She's brought back, and the last words we read were that Isaac brought Rebecca into the tent, Sarah, his mother, and he was comforted her. He was comforted by her loss. He loved her, and it brought him some healing. And it's a beautiful line. It's like a beautiful line of love, of healing, of finding, you know, finding a companion who brings you peace and who helps you heal. The wonderful side of love. The next line in the Bible, the next chapter is it's almost, wait, what? It almost becomes absurd. I'm not kidding. Um, I know, John, do you want to read today? You're on your phone. Do you want to read into this today? There's not a,
Yeah, hold on a second though. I've got to get off my phone and onto my tablet. So give me
Yeah, so you'll take us through the first part of the story, which is not what you expected to have after after Isaac and Rebecca, the love story. That's why I originally called this one funeral, a couple weddings, a few weddings.
sorry, hold on one second.
Okay.
Okay, in a second. Let me, let me
Well, we can hear you on the
Here.
phone, but
No. But it's hard to so hold on.
I
I
understand.
guess I could do it this way and just pull it up on
Yeah, just read the first six verses. We're gonna get the first part of the story. The first story. There's a couple stories here. Here it
so
is.
right there.
Hmm.
Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimron, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan begot Sheba. Is that Queen of Sheba?
Yeah.
And Dedan. The descendants of Dedan were Ashurim, the Letzushim, I can't pronounce it,
That's okay.
Letzushim,
Uh-huh.
and the Luminin.
Uh-huh.
The descendants of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Enoch, Abida, Eldah. All these were descendants of Keturah.
Yeah. Not exactly what you expected.
You know, when we
Especially since no matter but wait, no matter who wrote this, whatever author wrote this, I usually think, again, we have an idea of the author who wrote this. Uh no matter which author wrote this, Abraham is old when this happens. Okay. So this is probably the J author who already previously had said about Abraham, the guy who actually wrote the previous chapter. So this isn't like a new author just threw in, hey, Abraham got married now. And that's when like they edited it together. No, this is understood to be Abraham had another wife after Sarah. Yes. What were you going to say?
when we first read through this, I don't know how many years ago, right? 5 years
Uh-huh.
ago when we did. I've forgotten it all, right? Not forgotten it, but
Uh-huh.
I forgot how detailed this
Yeah.
was. So you forgot about the second of this next one.
Yeah.
So I really like this
Yeah.
slow way of doing things. Sinks in.
Well, it definitely is amazing the details or the things that we don't remember about these people, and especially again, Avraham, who's so important that we forget, or we again it kind of goes back in our mind, to the recesses. He gets married again after Sarah dies, and now after his son just got married, which you know it's strange. So first of all, like why? Well, like what has to happen here? Like what is this doing? Now, on one hand, this fulfills God's promise, which is God had told Abraham, you're going to be married to, you're going to be the father of many nations. So being the father of the Midianites here, right? That's Zipporah. That's Moses's wife's family. Um, and so Judith just pointed out that you need to put the out. Let me do that. Uh the the so this is a fulfillment of that. You're going to be Avraham. You're going to be a father of many people. Okay, okay, I get it. You could have said maybe Ishmael was enough. No, we're gonna get Ishmael today, right? We're gonna hit that. But yeah, this seems to be like really the fulfillment because all of these people become nations. Sheba, as John pointed out, this is the Queen of Sheba. This is that area of we think Yemen, some area around Saudi Arabia. That was Shiva, Dedan. All of these places are Arab Bedouin peoples that like they knew about. These were people that saw themselves as Abraham's descendants, just like Ishmael did. So there was a tradition that Abraham was the father of several peoples. And again, remember, he is not from that area. Abraham, as we read, his family came from Ur. He came from the Chaldean city states of Mesopotamia. And then he came into this part of the world of Canaan, the halfway point or the mid, the caravan stop area between Egypt and Mesopotamia, that he lived there, but he didn't come from there. And so these descendant Bedouin tribes, probably proto-Arab peoples, are part of Abraham's family, who again is not from there to begin with. So, he's the progenitor of other people. Now, the Midrash does not like the fact that Abraham marries another woman here, and to some extent. It seems creepy to them. Like, what's Abraham running around getting other people pregnant? What's he doing here? So, what does the Midrash say? Somebody tell me. I know some of you know this. Who is Keturah? Anybody?
Hagar.
Somebody. Yes. Keturah is the new name for Hagar. Hagar gets renamed. Why? Because Keturah means make Ketoret, incense, fragrance. She's like a fragrance. That she's Qatar, that she's tied to Abraham, Qatar. So that maybe that's how the name is there. That's a reunite. I like that idea. Get reunited. After Sarah is now out of the picture, he gets back together with his other wife. Okay. That makes it maybe less weird. But the fact that Abraham's having kids when he's 100
That
something years
makes it
old,
more weird. That makes it more weird. That shows
it
Hagar has no
does.
respect.
Huh?
It can't be Hagar. It has to be somebody else. Hagar has more self-respect than to come back to
Oh,
this man.
okay. No, come on, Judith. I mean, when they wrote that midrash, it seemed totally possible. First of all, who's Hagar going to marry after Abraham? You've had Abraham. Can't go back to normal guy after that. No, no, no. They have no issue with the fact that Hagar wants to, should be, whatever. Again, it partly comes from the idea that they don't want
Again,
Abraham
written by a man.
chasing after women. I know, but I mean, it's in their minds it was not ridiculous, and they do ridiculous things, but this was not in the realm of ridiculousness. That he gets back together with Hagar. Look, I'm just telling you. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that again he fulfills biblical prophecy. That's the most important thing. But but all of these kids that now include all of these other children and this guy, Ishmael, here's what it says. John, 7:6.
Oh, sorry. Abraham willed all that he owed to Isaac. But to Abraham's sons, by concubines, Abraham gave gifts while he was still living. And he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the land of the east.
So that seems to be that he got them away from Isaac. And again, did he get them all back to Mesopotamia? In which case, like these people like moved way far away. Um, okay, it's very clear that
There's half
there's
half
half
kin,
brothers, right?
half kin.
So they're younger half brothers, and so he gives them stuff during his lifetime. So rather than give him any of his will, so he wills the nothing. They get nothing from the will. He gives them stuff. He gives them stuff while he's alive. Okay. and then he sends them away.
Before you go there, have we, because I don't remember this being discussed, and if I did, then okay. Have we even discussed the monogamy? You know, I mean,
What do you mean?
well, I mean,
Was the expectation for him to be monogamous?
yeah, I mean, I mean, back then, I guess that
So okay, let's say by the time that this was actually written down, monogamy would have been the person. Let's assume that the people who wrote this were priests, religious leaders, scribes, people in the inner circle of the priesthood or leadership or prophets. Let's say, and they're writing it around 800, 700 BC, so about 700, 800 years after Abraham lived. They're definitely projecting backwards what Abraham's lifestyle as a tribal leader would have been like. They still encountered lots of tribal leaders who, for the most part, almost all tribal leaders practiced polygamy, who had many wives. They had separate tents, as we've seen. Sarah had her own tent.
mm,
Each of these women had their own tent. They did not live together in some kind of, harem situation where some guy is, look at bring me all my wives. This was not what happened. These were people who essentially, again, maintained a different household with their different wives. And again, yes, not necessarily this was going on simultaneously, but you know, this was uh, probably written by people who did not live that lifestyle and were projecting imagining to some extent what it's like, because they probably weren't, they probably were practicing monogamy more likely by
okay,
this point. By the rabbinic period, they're all virtually monogamous. There's very few rabbis who are married that we know of that are married to more than one woman. It basically didn't exist. This is kind of an intermediary period where the average Joe probably was monogamous. He was living in a city. He was living in a town. Did not
Hey,
Was not conducive to
yeah,
polygamy. And
you
the
don't
only
have
people
lots of
most
wives if you're in the city.
no. And the only people who
Grace.
probably did were like kings and nobles, like people who lived in the city, like a King David. Like King David clearly had multiple wives, but there was a purpose to that, and people like kind of understood that that's what the king did. As far as the average citizen living in a Judean city or a Israelite city. And even many of the kings don't seem to have had multiple wives. I mean, David and Solomon seem to be the exceptions. I mean, we don't read about Saul first of all, having multiple wives, and we don't read about, we don't, actually, he did, Saul did, but we're not sure that they were not sure he was married at the same time to multiple wives, but most of the other kings that we read about after that, we don't read about them having multiple wives. I mean, it could have, because we only read about usually the child that they had with the wife, with the wife. We read about the mother sometimes, the mother's name, but you remember king. We don't read about all of their wives, mainly because we only read about the wives that they had the next king with, but we don't hear about it, and we don't have like archaeological evidence. From the archaeological evidence, it doesn't seem that people lived in with multiple wives, mainly because the houses that we found their houses. We have houses from this period. They're not set up for multiple families. Okay? So to answer your question again, not
okay,
likely that the people who wrote this were practicing polygamy. Now, again, this part of it up till this point is probably one author who's not so concerned about the physical ability for Abraham to have a child at 130 or 120, whatever. Okay. But he's old. There's no question he's old. This author, if it indeed is the J author, has already said back when Isaac was born that he's old. They've said that J. Author has said that Sarah is beyond the point of having her period anymore, which, by the way, for a guy, if they're both in their 60s or 70s, doesn't mean that he still can't have a kid. Okay, so I mean, any of this is physically possible. That of course, isn't the issue. The author here initially says that Abraham has other kids and he fulfills that part of the prophecy and he sends them away, and Isaac gets everything from the will. Everything. Now, you can make the argument that this is a separate author that's going to also then wrap up Abraham's story. And this is Abraham's final part of his life. So let's read these next verses, these next like four verses, 4 or 5 verses that take us through Abraham's end. Okay. Keep going.
This was the total span of Abraham's life, 175 years.
And by the way, that is a full indicator that we're back to the P author. That is the P author's strategy always. Tell you how long somebody lived, and boom, that's that. We don't know whether there's a numerical significance, there's symbolism, you take these numbers and divide by, and there is a math code that I'll show you when we get through Joseph, but we don't know. We don't know what it means. There is a math code that I've shown you before, and I'll remind you later about what the math code is. But he lives 175 years. That's a long, long life, no matter what. All right, and here's what it says.
And Abraham breathed his last, dying at a good ripe age, old and contented, and he gathered to his kin. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in a cave in, I can't pronounce it. I want to do it. Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar, the Hittite, facing Mamre. The field that Abraham had bought from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried, and Sarah his wife. So they both were buried. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac settled near Beer Lahai Roi.
Yep. So that is the end. The people who study the authorship say that this last bit, and Isaac settled near Beer Lahai Roi, actually comes at the end of this line where it says that Isaac fell eastward to land. The sons went to the east, whereas Isaac lived in the well by Lahai Roi, which is again the well of seeing God, right? It's the well that things happen by, like where Hagar was. So in the desert, it's near Beersheba. Okay, but here's the key part. There's a few key parts, right? But we got to say something about this. So he lives a very, very long time, and it says that he died at a ripe old age, right? He died at a good time. Old and contented, which is the translation for the word savea, which we use for satisfied, contented. It's a good translation. It's legit. He dies satisfied. Now, again, doesn't say he was wealthier. We know he is, but doesn't say that. Doesn't say he died, without having some bad stuff in his life. We know he did. Has a hard time having children, has fighting amongst Sarah and Hagar, which obviously results in weird stuff happening. But he dies satisfied, right? He dies satisfied. And that is maybe the greatest blessing that somebody could have, which is they lived a full life. Not a perfect life, not a painless life, not a always happy life, but satisfied. And when somebody can die in a situation being satisfied, which unfortunately, by the way, doesn't happen a lot. I mean, it happens. I'm not saying it, it's not going to happen for you, and it's not, but it happens far too few times where somebody dies satisfied. I mean, it's what, like, you can make the argument. This is the way you want to go out, feeling satisfied, right? I think about that word. It was like, the Snickers bar, but it is in a way like it's the highest level of of finishing, right? I finished satisfied. Um, Savua.
Of course, that's the way they wanted to write it, right?
Fine. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean,
500 years later, what did they know?
maybe he wasn't.
He could have been miserable in a cave.
In their imagination, he was. And the way that we want to mythically send him out, he is. Which is interesting because again, we know he had a hard life. But that's the important thing. So we know he had a hard life. From what they've given us, we know he could have felt not satisfied, based on the struggles that he had. So I just find it interesting that like in a way, that's what we aspire to. We aspire to having again, you know, it's important that it's not just the way it's perceived, but that it really is that we go out feeling satisfied. I mean, how often do we really feel that, right?
Do we know where Machpelah is?
Yeah, that's Hebron. That's the cave of Hebron, the one I showed. Weren't you there when we did the story of the burial cave?
Yeah, but so did they find any archaeological evidence?
We can't dig them up. We can't touch them, but we don't know whether Abraham is definitively there. But we do know that for 1,000 years, don't I mean closer to probably 2,000 years, that is the place where people said he was buried. It's more definitive, for example, than the burial place is for Jesus, which of course he wasn't there anyways after, according to the story, he was resurrected. But we don't even think that that's the spot where the cave he was buried was. So, we don't know. I mean, we don't know for sure. It's not, it's possible. We're not gonna disturb it.
Right.
All right. What else is real important to say here? Well, let's just say that Isaac and Ishmael buried him together. That's a pretty powerful scene. We don't know what the conversation was like, right? We don't know what was said. That would be cool to know what that was like for the two brothers to come back together. We don't know if they've seen each other. We don't know. Maybe they have, but maybe they haven't. Maybe they haven't seen each other for 30 years. 40 years.
Nobody's made that movie or written that short story.
No. The Midrash has them kind of not having seen each other, but we don't know. I mean, maybe they did stay in, like, the Midrash, kind of the theme of the Midrash is that Ishmael was jealous of Isaac and wouldn't have wanted to be around him, and there would have been animosity. But I mean, if on the other hand, if Keturah, his mother, is living with Abraham, when Abraham, but then we don't know that Abraham and Isaac ever talk. As you noticed, 3 chapters before we have the Akedah, they never talk again. I mean, you didn't miss it. We just read it. Isaac's not even in the scene where Abraham goes and gets him the wife. He's not even there. We don't know that Abraham and Isaac ever said another word after the Akedah. That's where you also have to kind of fill in the blanks. Like, did they ever talk again? What did they say to each other? Did Isaac, kind of pull away from Abraham as a joke every time he reached out to try to touch him? No, that's okay. Yeah, don't touch me. Who knows? We don't know. We don't know that they ever talked again. So there you go. Yeah, you're worried about Isaac and Ishmael. I'm wondering about Isaac and Abraham. We don't know. But he did bury his dad. There's no drama, there's no speech. We don't know. They buried him. This is the scene where we don't have the dialogue. We would love to have the dialogue. We'd love to have what do they say to each other? It doesn't, I mean, for those of you who've read the Bible, it doesn't surprise you that there's nothing here. I mean, there's a lot of times when there's no dialogue, there's no conversation. But Jacob and Esau will eventually come together to bury their father Isaac. and Joseph and his brothers come together to bury their father Jacob. So we're going to get into, as I just kind of hinted at, we're going to get into a lot of family drama, families not getting along. And that's why I say it's real, because I can't tell you how many times, I don't want to get too emotional as I talk about it, because this didn't happen to me, okay? It didn't happen to my family, but I've had so many families where family hasn't seen each other until a funeral. Brothers haven't seen each other for decades until a funeral. I had one a few months ago for someone that is very much a part of our community, and we still talk about it. You know, we've talked about it in the last couple of months several times. Why do funerals bring people together? You know?
Well, you bring them together, but it doesn't mean you put a put aside the past or the issues until it's reconciled for whatever reason.
No, but
And it
a
can't
lot.
just be water under the bridge. Sometimes things are so thick that it can't just be water under the bridge.
No, there are some times where families don't heal, but there are a lot of families, John, that the family finally comes together after the death, after a death. Look, it did happen in my family. It didn't happen in my immediate family, but I saw it happen when my great grandfather died. My grandmother had not talked to one of her sisters for several months. No, probably by that time for several years, months. It was for several years. There had been a family rift between my grandmother and her siblings. They took sides amongst their family. There was four siblings, and they got in a fight, uh, a serious fight where like the families couldn't talk to each other. So my dad didn't talk to his cousins for a while, and they weren't allowed. Like my grandmother laid down, like, we're not talking to that side of the family right now, or not right now. I mean, like, we're not talking to them. So like you didn't go against it. Like so I had my bar mitzvah. I wasn't allowed to invite that part of the family that she had cut off. And it was so dysfunctional. It was so sad to see, sisters not talking to each other. And my great grandfather lived a very long time. Coincidentally, his name was Abe. His name was Abe, Abraham. When Abe died, when Abe died, my grandmother and her sister healed their problem. Like it wasn't like it was over, but all of a sudden, like the rift was over. And it was such a weird thing because it's like, wouldn't you do that during your dad's lifetime so that he knew that the family was no longer having a problem? It was so weird.
And
Like I
it's
saw
human
it.
nature. It's human nature, right? You always assume that there's more time. And you, even when there's not, and you know there's not, but you assume there's more time. And the reality of your own mortality hits you at a funeral or illness, and you make amends at that point.
Or you
Uh,
don't, because whatever
Right. Or you
whatever
don't.
happened was so horrendous
yeah,
that one
but
person has to capitulate.
so let's say that doesn't
That's
happen.
true too.
Let's say, John, that there is the healing, though, that Judith just I think gave the easy answer. I mean, I'm saying it's you got the easy answer. No, I think Judith's point is that people confront with their own mortality, say, hey, why am I holding on to this grudge? I need to let it go. I think that does happen. But I think there's another thing that's much sicker, which I think happened with my grandmother's situation. And I see it happen a lot. And that is, there's two things that happen sometimes when someone leaves this world. The fighting that goes on to be that parent's favorite child, let's say, or to jockey into first position is gone. The person's gone. You can't impress them anymore. You can't be the hero anymore or the best anymore. And so that's gone. And what that does sometimes, ironically, is that person now no longer holds that power, that dynamic that they almost played like, and again, I think for my great grandfather, there was a little bit of that manipulation, that chess playing, um, that it's gone. And so it's gone. There's no, you don't have to do that anymore. The, it's almost like puppetry, and you cut off the strings to the puppet. It's done. Can't be manipulated anymore. You can't, it's gone. Who are you going to impress? So I think that happens sometimes when a parent dies, a mother or father dies, and the kids are now left to be like, well, now we're adults. Now we have to be real. Now there's no more mom and dad. And for my grandmother, I mean, she was in her 70s when her dad died. So that was, but it's still in probably at some level infantilized her. That's one aspect. There's another aspect that I think happens, which is that when people when a parent or the head of a household um, passes away, it's connected, but it forces people to step up and to now be adult, right? And to make and to make the adult decisions that are no longer the we've been playing out the same dynamic throughout our childhood. So now we're it's over. We've now stepped up a level. And I think that happens with people. And again, I mean, like I said, I saw it happen to my grandmother in her 70s. But there was like at some level, she was still a 10-year-old girl fighting with her younger sister or her older sister. So I think it forces people to kind of finally step up into another level of adulthood and responsibility.
Well, like I said, it depends on what the rift is, right? The rift between Isaac and Ishmael, right, bleeds. The genesis of that was their you know
Yeah,
the
okay, but
mothers, right? And it was
we don't really know how bad it was, though. We don't we you know
no,
we
there's no discussion of it really,
we don't
right?
know if it was really bad at all. I mean, we assume that it is. The midrash is that that Ishmael is jealous of Isaac and wants to do away with him and all this other stuff, but we don't know that. Could have been just a protective older brother. We don't know. But again, the way it plays out in reality with families is an interesting one because sometimes death accomplishes something that we can't do, you know, until a death happens, which is grow up.
It's assuming
You
that the parties are mature enough to deal with the issue.
No, for sure, for sure. But I mean, at a deep level, I mean, my sister and I were closer than we were when we were kids. We did not get along as kids, but I mean, we've gotten along better as we got older. But we're even closer now since my mother and father have died. I mean, we rely on each other in a different way. We talk to each other because if we can't, we can't talk to our parents. So the closest that we can get is talking to them, right? So there's things like that I do think are real. There's like there are feelings here that this elicits that I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah, this is Isaac and Ishmael coming together for burial. That always resonated, even for the sages 2,000 years ago, as something that there's healing there. And the way they describe it is the brothers coming together to bury their father to show that they're we are connected. You know. Any comments, questions, any any thing that people want to point out? This is Abraham's exit. We have 13 chapters of Abraham in the Torah, right? From chapter 12 here to chapter 25. He's definitely the person that we've gotten to know the most. He's not the person we'll get to know the most because the next 25 chapters we actually have Jacob in the picture. We're going to meet Jacob today. But we do get quite a lot, and he's the first person in the Bible that we don't know anything about his childhood, right? We wish we did. Don't have anything about his childhood, but we know a lot about his journey, right? We know about the last 75 years, 100 years of his life since he left. We don't know how old he was when he left Padanaram, but um, but we do know about this part quite a bit. And we'd like to know more. I mean, I think that's pretty safe to say. But this is somebody that we've got a little bit more information on. All right. So the burial, and this is a weird little section here. What do we have this for? What's this? Who are these people? All right. Rosemary, do you want to read this? Has got a lot of names here. A lot of names.
She's better at it than me.
She's the name queen.
She is. She's better than the
Now,
begots.
Judith is the name queen.
Okay, that's true. Judith is too.
This is the line of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's slave, bore to Abraham.
By the way, in case you didn't forget, but again, it was not necessarily the same author, but we do get a bunch of begots. Here we go.
These are the names of the sons of Ishmael by their names in the order of their birth. Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Kedar, Adviel, Mivsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Yetur, Naphish, and Kedma. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their encampments, 12 chieftains of as many tribes. These were the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his kin. They dwelt from Havilah by Shur, which is close to Egypt, all the way to Ashur. They camped alongside all their kin.
Yeah, and that's a couple of sentences about Ishmael. Now, of course, we learned that he lives to be 137. That's pretty old. Not as old as necessarily some of the patriarchs, like his father, to be 175, but he's still a long life. And of course, we read that he has 12 sons, 12 princes.
Hey,
Well,
Mark,
that's interesting, right? He's got 12, right? They're chieftains. Shnei Masar Nisi'im. 12 chieftains, just like we have 12 tribes. They've got 12. Yeah, so here we got Ishmael, not quite part of the family. Yes, he's a little bit, but he gets promised stuff. God told Hagar, I'm going to make him a great nation too. All right, there you got it. Don't worry. Again, God doesn't just promise Jewish people stuff, he promised other people stuff. And you get one mission, somebody else gets another mission. This doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means you have a different mission, you have a different thing, you have a different place, but you got something. Yes, Judith.
the names, is it just because I'm used to Hebrew names because I hear them more often? The names have a different linguistic quality to them. Am I wrong about that?
Um,
Just
no, you're not wrong. On the other hand, nobody's gonna name
Oddbell,
no,
Kedar,
no
like they just
nobody's
sound different.
nobody's gonna name their kids these names. Though Ishmael was a name that Jews were named, at least through the rabbinic period. After Islam, no. You don't see it
Well,
anymore.
yeah, that's fair.
But we have multiple Rabbi Ishmaels in the Talmud. So and one of the Rabbi Ishmaels was very important. It was one of the leaders of a whole school of thought. Rabbi Ishmael's um, his scholarly practice is famous. So it's it was a legitimate Hebrew name. It means God hears, and so. But yes, you're right that these names
They
don't make their way
sound
in. I will say this: these names probably during the biblical period were not that were not that were not that maybe uncommon. Like Hadad, you know, pagan god Hadad. So maybe uh Tama, probably. Yatur was a name that was Jewish. But there aren't a lot of,
There are a lot more Dars and Mas, it feels
yeah,
like.
yeah. I mean,
You know what I mean? It
yeah,
feels
it's the look. There, part of it is, again, nobody is going to be named this because these are definitely not Jewish names. I mean, they're
right,
literally saying these are names of Ishmaelites. But I would say that at the time that these names were out, that this was out, 3,000 years ago, these wouldn't have been that. Like this is the only one, Adbael, which is not an L name necessarily, so it's not really. It's that's why they write it as Adbeel,
right.
even though it's Adbel. But yeah, I mean, these are not names that contain L in them, except for Ishmael. They're also not. They're not place names inside Israel,
That that's probably why. Yeah.
except for the word Yatur, because Yatur was part of the Golan. So this is an area that that's why Yatur would have been there. But again, Kedma, which is the east, that's the name literally means east. Though the name Kedem in Hebrew,
Them.
it's not super popular, but like I know that like Kedem became a little bit of a girl's name in Israel.
Yeah.
Um, I I I
I
I
have
I've
a niece.
I've met Kedems before. It's not super popular, but I have met Kedems. Um, and let's see how popular of a name. It's not super popular, it did list super trendy Israeli names of Hebrew origin for baby girls: Ayala, Raz, Mayan, Kedem, Alma, Netta. Anyways, so it's made its way back in, but anyways, yes, they're not super, would not be super common Hebrew names. You're correct, but also again because they're not Jews and because they're not places for the most part that are in the land of Israel. Look again, why is it here? We're going to read a whole chapter on the descendants of Edom, of Esau. The Bible definitely wants to place everybody and let everybody know where they belong. And in some cases, even they're not us, even they're not our people, they're pretty close. So what could happen, what we could say is that, Ishmael has a place in our Bible and we don't skip over him. We don't ignore him. We don't say, yeah, well, he's different mom and we don't really count him. But he's counted. He's accounted for. And so we're maybe not in this place right now, but you know, we hope one day there's a place, around our table for the descendants of Ishmael, and we hope that they at some point
Right.
feel comfortable with us and we feel comfortable with them and everyone can sit around the table again. It's not doesn't feel that way right now. Again, according to this, they kind of live in the desert. They live on the way from Havilah down to Egypt, right? Around that area, out to Ashur, which is out towards the east, towards Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, it's exactly where you think these people would live. And we don't know what happens to them other than, according to tradition, they become Arabs. So now, I left
Does,
this in here so
does
you can
the
see
name
it.
I'm sorry, does the name Arab mean something?
Arab?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because, in Hebrew, the word doesn't appear a lot, right? It does not, we don't use the word Aravim a lot in the Bible, which means that we didn't call them that in the Bible. We didn't call them Arab in the Torah. Wasn't wasn't what we called them. The 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 term really as a definitive term for really doesn't become popular until just before the time of Muhammad, right? So it wasn't until maybe 1500, 1600 years ago that people definitively said, hey, these are the Arabs. I think printer's going out. I would say the Arabs, at least the way we saw them in the Bible, were not only Ishmael. Well, that's I don't want to say it like that. Ishmael's people became identified in part of the Arab people. But I do believe to some extent the Arabs existed, but not as like it was almost everybody in that area in that area. I mean, it's connected to the word Arava, which is like the desert where they kind of came from. But there's a real
Oh,
question about it because like when we go to we've taken people to Jordan, on several trips to Israel. We've taken people to Petra, and we've gone to Arab countries, especially desert Arab countries. And the people who were there, like during the Roman period, they were called Nabateans. But are the Nabateans really different than the Arabs, or were they just subsumed by the Arabs? So I want to be real careful about how to definitively say this person is Arab because we really didn't talk about that until just before the time of Muhammad, where Arabs really kind of definitively we say this is a cultural ethnic group that is those people that include all of these other people, the Ishmaelites, the Nabateans, whatever groups that we were going to call them. But obviously part of it was their language, part of it was the language that they spoke, and part of it was the fact that they came from the Arabian Peninsula.
remind me when Mohammed came? What
About
year?
600, about 600, 550s
Okay.
of Common Era. So it's about
So until
15,
then, they're just a
it's
bunch of
about
different
15,
tribes.
about 1500 years ago. So kind of after the Byzantine Empire, it was already,
Hmm.
existing. And it's partly again, it's kind of a nebulous phrase until that time, until
He
Muhammad
unites
really
his people.
organizes and unites them together.
Wow.
All right. So, but these are like Ishmaelites are part of what would be the Arab peoples. I mean, look, what I'm saying is that people want to say that Ishmael is the ancestor for all the Arabs. I mean, I think that's probably not accurate. Though, again, people who want to look at it from the Bible will say, "Oh, yes, he's the answer. There's no Arab until Ishmael." I'm not really sure that that's fair to say, especially since all those other people that we read about that are Keturah's kids, all these other people are Arab too now. So I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, um,
So Abraham married a Canaanite.
Keturah doesn't say Keturah is Adamite. I mean,
Canaanite? No, but
Canaanite. By the way, Judith, you might be on part of the point about why she is Hagar. Is because they don't want her to be Canaanite. But then again, if she's from Egypt, she's Hamite anyways. I mean, it's like, where did where did she come from? Like we don't hear about her until Abraham comes out of Egypt. The assumption was is that she was part of the package that he got, the going away package, right, from the Pharaoh. Don't know. We don't know. But the fact that maybe Hagar is at least Hamitic anyways, that would make her pretty not, you know, not acceptable.
It,
Yeah, but Abraham definitely seems to not want Canaanites in the family. We've already made it. That's already been clear. And we're
Rabbi,
going to see the same thing, by the way, from Isaac and Rebecca. Isaac and Rebecca don't agree about a lot of things, as we're about to see. They are in 100% agreement. We don't marry Canaanites. Yeah.
is this the first example of interfaith?
You mean Abraham?
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, well, from the
And if
standpoint of, and from, wait, let me just say, from the standpoint that he marries somebody out, yes. From the standpoint that these people that he marries out with are not Israelite, what difference does it make? They're not Israelite. They're not considered Israelite. Keturah's descendants, Hagar's descendants are not Israel. So it's not an issue. Yeah, he could say, but that's why, like the Bible distinguishes them as concubines. That's why when it says that Abraham, that Abraham, the sons that he had by concubines got gifts. you know.
I understand, but
They
if it
got,
was so
they got
abhorrent to
parting
the,
gifts, as they would say on the game show.
I,
Parting gifts.
well, but if it was so abhorrent to the sages and it was written so far,
I like
it
I
wouldn't
like
have
I
been mentioned.
like I just said, maybe again, that was Judith's point of maybe Hagar, where was Hagar from? If Hagar is not Canaanite, then she's okay. And then Keturah being Hagar is not Canaanite, it's okay. But I don't know. Maybe that's part of why the Midrash exists, is they don't want Hagar to be a Canaanite, you know. But again, if she's Hamitic, what difference does it make? If she's a descendant of Egyptians, she's still Hamitic. But again, we seem to give Egyptians a pass. We seem to give Mitzrayim a pass that we don't give the rest of the Hamitic peoples. Definitely Canaan. I mean,
Because
Canaan,
Joseph's children could be the
of
children of
course,
Ishmael,
of
right?
course,
That's why.
of course. But also the Bible says in Deuteronomy, we're allowed to bring in Egyptians after a couple of generations. We're not allowed to bring in Edomites and Moabites. I mean, that's the weird thing, is they're actually not Hamitic and they can't come in. But Egyptians who are Hamitic, they can come in. And by Hamitic, I mean Mitzrayim, it says, as one of the descendants of Noah's descendants through Ham is Mitzrayim, which, by the way, makes sense to some extent. I mean, it makes sense.
And
Anyway,
Ruth is a Moabite.
Ruth is Moab. Yeah. Yeah. So this all thing, this whole first 18 verses, by the way, were part of the previous Haye Sarah. So here's the weird thing. That's why, like, if I'm saying what is the theme of Haye Sarah, it's four weddings and a funeral. Well, not really, because right, Haye Sarah begins with finding the cave of Machpelah, has the whole 67 verses of Isaac finding Isaac's wife, which is the wedding, and then a couple other, well, another wedding here, which is Abraham to Keturah. So it's two weddings and a funeral, if you will. But yeah, it's a long parsha. It's a lot to digest in 1 week, a lot to think about, which is why there's no way you can do that. There's no way you should do that. It's not fair. It's not fair to our brains taking all this stuff. So let's read about our friends, Isaac and Rebecca, because this isn't just about Isaac. Actually, this really isn't about Isaac. Well, it's a little bit. It's really about Rebecca. So Toldot is the next portion, and it begins halfway through chapter 25. And this is a very amazing portion, which covers Jacob, his birth, all the way through the part that we're going to get to in a few chapters, which is the famous scene of Isaac's deathbed, which isn't his deathbed, but he thinks it's his deathbed. So let's take a look at,
This is the story of Isaac, son of Abraham. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took to wife Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel the Aramean of Padan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean.
yeah. So the beginning of this is a reintroduction of who he is, reminding us, of course, that there is no question who his father was, because it could have just said Isaac was the son of Rebekah. No, it said, I mean, Isaac was the son of Abraham. It says, no, Abraham begot Isaac again, so that you know that this is Abraham's real son. And of course, it could have said Sarah, but it didn't. But yes, because it does talk about Rebecca. So it's not like it's ignoring women, but it says here that he was 40 when he took to wife Rebecca, which the previous story didn't, though it does make sense from the standpoint, at least on this author, it's consistent with the fact that he was 37 when his mother died. So at 40, he takes her to wife. So that's consistent. The other author, that's the P author, is the age guy, the guy that talks about ages all the time. The J author goes back and it doesn't seem to be that concerned with it. And hence, if Isaac is in his 20s or 30s when this scene is going, the next words are even more powerful. If the people, I don't want to dwell on this, and I'm only bringing it up because of this. If Isaac is 40 and Rebecca's roughly 35 or whatever, is close to that age, which again, we already said, maybe she was a lot younger, whatever, we don't know. But if she's roughly the same age and she's not having a child, you go, well, she's kind of older. But if she's in her 20s and she can't have kids, this means that this is not going like this is not the way it's supposed to be. I'm not saying somebody in their 40s or late 30s not having a baby isn't tragic. I'm just saying it's a little less surprising, I guess, is the issue. Because here's what happens.
Isaac pleaded with God on behalf of his wife because she was infertile, and God responded to his plea, and his wife Rebekah conceived. But the children struggled in her womb, and she said, "If so, why do I exist?" She went to inquire of God, and God answered her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two separate peoples shall issue from your body. One people shall be mightier than the other, and the older shall serve the younger."
Yep. All right. So, a couple things here in these few verses. Got to talk about. So, if he's married for a while and this happens, which it could be because elsewhere in the P author, we're going to have, I'm not going to ruin it, but it says right here, blah, 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 blah. Ooh. He's praying for a long time, 20 years. So we believe that's a little bit more of the P author telling us how old Isaac is when his sons are born. So if he's praying for 20 years, that's really, really tough. That's a long time. No matter what, there seems to be a long time that Rebecca could not have children. The word that's used here, Vayatar Yitzchak, isn't just God. It's not he just spoke to God. It's not that he prayed to God. Yatar, they translate it as pleaded. Does anybody else have any other translations for the word pleaded?
Entreated.
Yeah, entreated. Look what Rashi says. He prayed much and urgently. You look at the other times when it occurs, right? Wherever the root atar occurs, it has the meaning of heaping up and increasing. Actually, Rashi says in French, we say incresser, English to increase. There's a sense of urgency and like frequency. It's not just that he pleads hard, but he pleads a lot. Like he just keeps pressing God, like 10 times a day he's praying. But there's also this understanding that he prayed for a long time.
Now, this is a different word than the word we use for the crown of our prayer shawl. Atar.
An atara?
Yeah, oh, there we go. Yeah, it's a different word.
No, it's yeah, I mean it's not a I don't know if
Kind of
anyone
do plead when we put it on.
I don't know if anyone's made a connection between those words. That's a good midrash there. Um I don't know if anyone's ever um, made a connection. It is a um hmm, no, not really sure. The you know the word literally atar in there means crown, the crown that we put on something. It's an atar, not tara. So it's like the crown of the talit. It's an interesting one. I don't know.
But we do kind of plead too, we put
Yeah,
it on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's something really, really like powerful about the fact that this is not the normal word that people say when they're praying. This is not like a normal prayer. And it says that, you know, she's barren, which is again the word for um akara is the word. That's weird. Atara and akara. Akar means to be barren. Um, and it seems to be like, almost divine, like she ain't having kids. So she does. And then, of course, once she's pregnant, then she talks to God. And the word that is used there is lidrosh, right? Like where the word midrash, or again, when we explicate or interpret something, right? She's going for oracle, right? She's going to find out why this is happening. And the phrase, of course, that she uses is, why am I here? Why, why am I here? The note here.
Kind of the
Why,
opposite of Hineni, too.
why do I exist? Yeah. Why am I here? Exactly. The opposite of me. Get me out of here. Uh,
I have a question.
yeah.
I hate to be a bit of a downer here, but it just hit me. Remember, I'm not as quick as everybody here, but Rebecca reaches out and speaks to God, but this was written, what, 600 years after it occurred.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
By that time, things had already played out.
Yeah.
So the writers knew what had occurred.
Yeah. Okay. So
Again, it's just wishful thinking that
no,
she
no, no.
actually spoke to God.
No, okay, I understand. But so why do they have her speaking to God? First of all,
Well, because I don't know whether
no, no,
they picked a
but
character.
yeah, I understand, but this is significant, right? This is significant, very important, right? Because the whole conversation is strange, by the way, because she says, why am I, she doesn't saying like, why am I alive for this, right? Why is this happening to me? But first of all, let it not be said that God doesn't speak to women in very clear, definitive. It's not just God calling. It's not like God just spoke to Sarah or she overhears this or God confronts Eve. This is a woman who went to ask God something and God answered. Okay. So, first of all, that's significant because it establishes without a doubt that God listens to women, answers their questions, answers their prayers, answers. So in Genesis, it's already established. There's no question. And that's significant. That's a significant statement. That's a significant point to make that Judaism establishes in Genesis that women talk to God in a prophetic way. Because remember, the answer she gets is an oracle answer. You're having this because there's two nations. Two nations are in your womb, right? That's the very oracular answer.
What I'm challenging you on is that conversation never occurred.
Oh, okay, but I agree with you, John. But you can make that argument about every
I
conversation.
understand, but this is
So
specific,
I
right?
understand, but in this conversation, we still have to then take away why is this here,
But
right?
but
So,
also, John, remember that it may not have been written down 500 years later. Doesn't mean it wasn't sung about or told about. So it could be, the bards of the
but listen,
second
I think
millennia.
John's point. Listen,
Or
John's
the
point is
authors had
this:
an agenda.
we yes,
Well,
100%. That I
okay.
was just going to say, 100%. This is an agenda. This is an agenda to explain the Edomites. There's no reason for the discussion about Esau other than to establish that. But that doesn't mean that what we're about to learn about Jacob and Esau doesn't have a whole lot to say about us, have a whole lot to say about every human being, have a whole lot to say about Jewish history to some extent, because this sets in motion Jewish history. Because what it does when God says to Rebecca, Rebecca's the first to hear this. You don't just have babies, you have civilizations inside your womb. And those civilizations are different from each other. So, John, this is the mythic beginning of the Jewish people. And Jacob is our ancestor, for better or worse, and whatever the Bible says about him. And you're right, there's an agenda, and there's going to be an agenda about Jacob. But Jacob and the Jewish people don't exist almost, you can make this argument, unless we're in opposition to something else. And it's the Edomites, it's this other group that's almost us, but not us, that becomes the definitive decision of what is Jewish and what's not Jewish.
And
Because Edom is almost us, but he's not. And it's again, it's the really good villain in a story where, wait a second, weren't they supposed to be the hero? And so there's a level to this. The rabbis recognize, by the way, the rabbis recognize this. There's midrashim about Esau that recognize this, that he almost he was close enough that he could have, it didn't have to be like this, or maybe it would have been him. That's the power of this story, is how close it wasn't Jacob. Or we can make the argument, what if this was one guy? What if Jacob Esau was never split? What if the what if the what if the what if that ovum hadn't split? What if this was one baby and not two? That's the more modern midrash. That's the midrash that I'm going to lay out when we go through the Jacob and Esau stories over the couple weeks. But this idea that Esau is almost there is what makes the Jewish story so interesting. It's what makes Esau so interesting as the foil, because he's what we're not, and but he's close. Like, he's the flip side of the coin, right? There's one coin, but there's two sides. Jacob's on one side and Esau's on the other, but they're one coin. So it's a really, really powerful mythic story that we're going to see in greater detail, because we're going to read it slower, because this is all one parsha, right? This is all one Torah portion, Toldot, but there's so much here. And there's a weird interlude, which we'll get to next week, which is the weird Isaac interlude, the only thing we really know about Isaac. But we just read about Isaac kind of emerging out of his father's shadow for a
Just
minute,
to
and he's
dole
not.
mean generations.
What?
Just to dole
Toldot
mean
means
generations.
generations,
Okay.
or sometimes we translate it as this is the story. So Ve'ela
Mm.
Toldot, this is the story we're going to tell. But yes, it's definitely connected to the word holid, which is the word here, but begot, right? Begot. Holid means to give birth to. So Toldot are generations. They're the word is like the word Yeled. It means child, but it's the story of the generation of, if you will, Isaac. This is the generation of Isaac. And so um, this is the amazing part of this story, is you don't have a hero unless you have a really good villain. And the closer the villain is to, I mean, it's like the interesting Batman versions where, the Joker kills Batman's parents. So that's how he becomes Batman. He doesn't become Batman until that happens, right? So in a weird way, the villain creates the hero and vice versa. But we'll think on that over the over the coming weeks. But right away, right, the she knows before she has the babies that she has twins. Well, she probably could feel it, right? She could feel the babies, but according to the midrash, she doesn't just feel the babies, right? Some of you might know this wonderful midrash that whenever Rebecca would walk past an idol, Esau would go crazy. I want to be near the idol, right? Whenever she would walk past a synagogue, which of course was synagogue, there's Abraham's synagogue, whatever, then Jacob would go crazy. So already in the womb, Jacob and Esau are drawn to their respective sides. So yeah, they're going nuts in the womb because they want to get out and they want to start doing, they want to start being in their environment. So this is amazing. Right. The Midrash basically, Jacob wants Torah, Esau wants to do some bad stuff. And again, as much as John says there's an agenda, yeah, the rabbis go, we don't care. We know there's an agenda. Let's make that agenda even more explicit. Let's play with that agenda. Let's make this agenda really, really, really clear. Let's play with it. Let's color it.
You know,
Yeah.
not to, I mean, we only have a few minutes left, but yeah, I've been texting a little bit with Judith on the side, and you know, that one statement about Rebecca speaking to God and God answering her. You know, I question again. It is all about agenda, and at the time, was there? And I wrote this to Judith. I'm not hiding anything. Was there just total chaos, and people needed guardrails? And so these people wrote this book to give people guardrails, to give them some, you know, foundation, some, you know, rules, right? I mean, I'm sorry
Okay.
to be that guy, but you know,
Okay.
what's the point of class if I can't push
Yeah.
the envelope a little?
There's no there. That's not. There's nothing pushing the envelope there at all. Not at all. Now the question is, all right. So she hears that this is what's happening. We're going to read a couple more verses. This is where we'll finish because we're about to open a can of worms, but we can make the argument we can't end just with the oracle. We can't end just with that. We got to hear about what happens when they're born. So let's finish with these last four verses. Four verses.
When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first one emerged red, like a hairy mantle all over, so they named him Esau. Then his brother emerged, holding on to the heel of Esau, so they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born.
Yeah, so it's possible that just little line was added, or not added, but is back to the P author. But again, looking at their names, Esav is a play on the word Seir or Se'ar, which means hair, which is also the name of the place where his descendants will live in Seir, but it's connected to Se'ar. That's one possibility of the name Esav. Jacob, on the other hand, is named after the play on the word Akev, which means heel. Yeah, the back of your foot. And of course, the reason was that he held on to Esau's heel. He was holding on to him like he wanted to come out. So there's an interesting understanding here that who was supposed to be born first? Esau pushes his way through and gets out first, even though Jacob was supposed to come out first. Esau pushes his way through and becomes the older one. But again, we already know Rebecca's been told that the older shall serve the younger, right? And so in a way, it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be him coming out second, but he's holding on. So it's almost as if I don't want to be the second born, but I have no choice. But I'm not letting you get out of here without me. So it's really an amazing situation that, again, they're fighting in the womb. There's something going on even in the womb of who's going to be the first one out. But of course,
Isn't there a midrash that that Jacob is supposed to is coming out first? And
When's the part with the thread and all that?
that is coming up. That
Ah,
is the sons of Judah with Tamar, Peretz, and Zerah.
oh,
Yes, but yes, you're right. There's a crimson thread tied around one of them. But those are our Judah descendants. But this is crazy because the word heel also means what it does today, which is you're a heel, right? Not a good word. You don't want to necessarily be called the heel because you're at the bottom of the foot. But here he is. He comes out holding on to his brother's heel. But yes, there's a midrash that he was supposed to come out first, and Esau pushes his way through. And of course, what Esau doesn't know is it's already been foretold that the first one coming out does not win, which, of course, this is one of those great biblical reversals, which we're going to have over and over and over again, which is, yeah, you think you know who's going to be in power, but it's not. And so the Torah loves that. And I would say it goes on beyond the Torah because King David is not the firstborn. Solomon is not the firstborn. And so the Bible is constantly challenging us from Genesis all the way through that just because the guy is supposed to be the one in charge doesn't mean he's going to be. And just because that guy you think will never be in charge, don't be so sure. So this determines to some extent the future of the Jewish people. And of course, maybe like what we expect to have happen, which is maybe we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you can't take for granted birth order. Pay attention, right? You don't know who's going to be in charge. And then we'll read these last two verses today.
When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Jacob became a mild man who stayed in camp. Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah favored Jacob.
Ooh, that's where we're going to finish. Esau is red, hairy. He's a man of the outdoors. He's going to be wild. He's a hunter. And whatever it is, Dad sure likes that guy. Jacob is tent dweller, he's quiet, stays in camp. If you look at the note here, could be that he raised livestock. Being in the tents could also mean that. Which isn't quite the same as just living in a tent. But there's an understanding here that he's a homeboy, homebody. He's a maybe a mother's boy.
It's the start of the myth of the Jewish nerd boy. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
the scholar, the non-physical.
Yes. And this is where it all goes back to. It all goes back to this. And so these archetypes start here. And we're about to get next week, we're going to start with the famous selling of the birthright. We're going to start with that next week. And we're going to read that horrible story of, or again, whatever you want to say it is. I mean, I think it's a horrible story. But it is real dysfunction. And that's what this is what we got to it. I didn't know how far we were going to get to it, but we're going to get into this really bad dysfunction. It's introduced here. It's not, we haven't read the consequences of it yet. Okay. We only know that the parents have set this in motion. They've set it in motion because it flat out says Isaac favors Esau. It says so. And of course, it says Rebekah favored Jacob. Now, people know my favorite midrash on this, which I don't know that anybody has ever said it the way I'm going to tell you, because I want to talk to you from the perspective of a modern person. But when it says that Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, that is conditional love. That is, I love you because you do something for me. Whereas it says Rebekah loved, favored. You can use favored. They use the same word, ahav, loved, favored Jacob. But it doesn't say that she favored him for a reason. And I've always taken away from this that Rebekah favors Jacob because she's compensating for the fact that her husband clearly favors the other son. Now you could also say, well, she favors him because she knows he's going to be the one that's going to be in charge. She knows. But there's something bad here. This is not a good thing. This is not held up by anybody as this is the way parents should raise children. Nobody ever says that about Isaac and Rebecca here. And this is why I say that none of the patriarchs or matriarchs gets out of here without some dirt. We don't have a lot of dirt on Isaac. I mean, Isaac does some stuff that, you know, we're going to see is kind of questionable. Like, not, again, you can make the argument he was only doing what his dad's doing, but this is not good. You can make the argument that even Abraham doesn't do this. Abraham doesn't like, Abraham doesn't even know what to do with Ishmael until God tells him what to do. He's not willing just to throw Ishmael out. God tells him, do what your wife Sarah tells you to do. This is something worse in a way, which is why? What did you do? Why would you do this? Why would you favor your son Esau? And again, the more modern perspective is that Esau is strong. He's powerful. He's manly. And Isaac identifies with those things that he didn't have himself. Isaac maybe felt emasculated by his own father. His father almost killed him. Was he powerless? Did he feel powerless after that experience? Did Esau represent manliness and represent, a masculinity that he didn't feel he had himself? There's a lot of times where there's two sons and dad really likes the athlete, really likes the guy that, scores you know, a lot of baskets, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of, super fast, got a lot of awards. But the son that doesn't have a lot of the awards doesn't get that kind of attention. Happens a lot. Happens a lot. And it obviously creates a dynamic that some people can never break through. And sometimes they break through when, as we said, that parent dies. And only then can they kind of step out of that shadow. But whatever it is, it's very real. And for brothers, thank God, I have half brothers who are much younger. I'm more like Ishmael and Isaac. I'm much more like I would say Reuben and Joseph, but or Judah and none of those are good with Joseph, but we have much more of a dynamic of not close in age brothers. But for people who have a sibling of the same gender, I would say too, it goes with daughters to some extent too. When kids feel like they're being judged against the other one, it's not a good it's not a good dynamic, you know, and it's tough. And it happens here. Unfortunately, it happens here in this story. And um, we're going to see the consequences of it in the coming weeks. This week, we're introduced to it. But next week, we're going to see the consequences of it. The week after, we're going to see the consequences of it. And one can make the argument we see the consequences of it to this day. Because to some extent, we're the Jewish people. We're the favored child of Rebecca. We're the good students. We're the people that try to impress people with our minds, not our bodies. Sometimes not a healthy separation between the mind and body, but that's what we get left with today. So is the story mythic? Is the story written hundreds of years later? Maybe, but whatever it is, we're dealing with the realities of it thousands of years later, because I've had firm discussions with rabbis about this scene right here and the scene coming up, where we have people who continue to teach we're the sons of Jacob. We're not like Esau. We're not going to be projecting power or strength, or we don't need to have a sports program at a Jewish school because we're studying. If you don't think that this is still discussed, I mean, you're naive or you don't want to understand that this still plays out in the minds of the Jewish people. plays out in the history of the story and the politics of Israel right now. Because there are people that are studying in yeshiva who say, we're Jacob, we're not Esau. The people that are running around telling people they need to be in the army, those are Esau people. Those are people that aren't wearing tefillin, that aren't, don't have beards, and they're not being like Jacob. Trust me when I tell you, this is the dialogue that goes on in Israel right now, today. So, yeah, it might be mythic and it might be made up and it might be written hundreds of years later, but it's playing out thousands of years later. And it's definitely relevant. And it's something that, again, we don't see as much living in America, but we still live in the shadow of that. So, and I've had discussions with people about it here in America. So I can tell you it is still playing out today. All right, we'll read that amazing story of Jacob and his brother Esau coming up next week and in the coming weeks. So we will see you the coming days. Hopefully tomorrow night we'll see you for the last of the sessions on Jewish music. We're going to be talking about Jewish music and specifically music from Israel and Jewish music that's used in synagogues and Jewish community life today.
Are you gonna sing the Eurovision song that Israel won?
Which one?
Hallelujah.
Okay, wait, that's one of four songs. That's one of four songs that we won. So we're going to talk about Eurovision, of course. But yeah, Hallelujah is just one of four. Think about that. That little country of Israel has won four Eurovisions. And we came in second last year. So this last year. So anyways,
That was
And
their first win, though, I think, wasn't it?
nope, nope, that was the second win. You have to come Wednesday if you want to see the four wins. We're going to go through it. All right, and we'll see you all hopefully maybe Friday night and see you coming stuff.
Stillmans are doing oneg, so it's going to be good.
Oh, it's going to be good. Now you've set yourself up, John.
Oh,
Now
it's
that is
always. Are
good.
you kidding me? I'm not going to have Drek.
Okay. All right. All right, everybody. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Rabbi. Good class.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.